Gather close and listen. The spirits of the land have a tale for us tonight.
Man, she thought she was so high and mighty looking down on everyone. But oh boy, was she about to get a huge dose of reality. What she did to that sweet old cleaner was just messed up. And she had no clue it would flip her whole world upside down in a bustling city where towering buildings scraped the sky and ambition filled every street there. Was this company a giant of industry where dreams were chased and fortunes were made, but beneath all that glitz and glamour, a different kind of story was unfolding, a story of hidden identities, unexpected kindness, and a comeuppance nobody saw coming. Deep inside one of those glass towers, a kindly old woman named Mama Margaret arrived for her first day as a cleaner. She moved with a quiet dignity, a gentle smile playing on her lips, but beneath that humble exterior lay a secret, a profound purpose that would soon shake the foundations of that corporate world. She wasn't just any cleaner. Oh no, she was on a mission from the heart. Mama Margaret had been a woman of immense wealth, her businesses spanning cities, her name synonymous with success. But all her riches couldn't buy her son true love. So she devised a plan, a daring masquerade, to find a woman pure of heart. She would become invisible. A simple cleaner observing people when they thought no one important was watching, and somewhere in this very building she hoped to find the genuine soul her son deserved. As she approached the grand entrance, two slick young employees passed by, their laughter echoing a little too loudly in the morning air. Mama Margaret, with her soft voice and gentle demeanor, asked for directions to reception. But man, their response was just plain rude. The guy crinkled his nose like she smelled bad. And his female friend laughed, adding some really nasty comments about her children and her poverty. It was a real gut punch, but Mama Margaret, she just kept her cool. She had learned that anger only fuels insult. She found the reception desk where a bright-eyed young woman named Ada greeted her with a warm smile. Ada was so polite, so genuinely kind. Mama Margaret instantly felt a connection. She told Ada she was the new cleaner, and Ada's smile just got even brighter, welcoming her with such grace. It was like a balm to Mama Margaret's bruised spirit, and she knew right then that Ada was special, a true light in this sometimes dark world. But then the atmosphere shifted. A woman in a sharp black suit strode in, her face a mask of cold seriousness. This was the manager, and man was she a piece of work. She completely ignored Ada's greeting, her eyes like daggers scanning Mama Margaret from head to toe. Ada softly explained Mama Margaret was the new cleaner, but the manager, she just cut her off, demanding to know why the boardroom wasn't clean yet, her voice dripping with disdain. The manager then laid down the law, a harsh list of rules: speed, silence, no disturbing staff, no using staff bathrooms, and definitely no touching the executive floor unless called. She finished her rant with a truly cruel jab, telling Mama Margaret to try to smell less like rotten eggs. Ada looked shocked but quickly looked away, while Mama Margaret just quietly accepted it, her heart heavy but her spirit unbroken. She thought to herself, leadership without kindness is like a knife that cuts even the owner. Dang, that hurt soon. After a cheerful woman named Ruqayyat from housekeeping came to show Mama Margaret around. Ruqayyat was so friendly, so welcoming. Mama Margaret immediately felt a sense of relief. They walked through the side corridor to a small storeroom filled with cleaning supplies. This was her new world, her new stage, and she was ready to play her part, no matter how difficult they started. With the boardroom, a massive, elegant space of shining glass and leather, Mama Margaret cleaned slowly, meticulously polishing every surface until it gleamed. Ruqayyat watched impressed, saying most new cleaners just rush, but Mama Margaret, she just smiled softly and said clean isn't just clean, clean is respect. She knew every detail mattered, every corner held a story. Later, while cleaning the elevator mirrors, two young women stepped in. Their conversation was all about snagging a rich CEO, or at least a guy with a big car, dismissing love as something that doesn't pay rent. Mama Margaret gently asked, what about a good heart? But the women just rolled their eyes, saying a good heart can't buy designer bags. As they walked out, Mama Margaret sighed deeply. If wealth is the only measure of love, then love is already lost, and she wondered how many truly kind hearts were being overlooked in the restroom. She found a nervous young intern named Daniel struggling with a coffee stain on his shirt. Mama Margaret gently showed him how to clean it, advising him to dab not rub. Daniel's face lit up with relief as the stain faded. He explained it was his first week, and he was so scared of his strict supervisor. Mama Margaret offered him kind words of wisdom, saying don't fear mistakes, fear refusing to learn from them, and to work hard, keep his heart clean, and his work even cleaner. Just as Daniel left, the manager stormed in, her eyes immediately hardening. Why are you still here? She snapped. Restroom should be done by now, and don't waste time talking to interns. They must learn to suffer. Go and finish your work. Mama Margaret quietly said yes, ma. Though her chest felt heavy, she knew this woman's heart was truly cold. During lunch, Mama Margaret found a quiet corner in the staff canteen, her body aching from hours of work. She opened her small meal, simple rice and stew, but precious to her. Just as she began to eat, a sharp voice cut through the peace. It was the manager, her face twisted in disdain. Leave that food now and go clean my office. My boyfriend is coming soon, she ordered harshly. Mama Margaret raised her tired eyes, pleading softly for a moment to eat, saying she was so hungry. Her eyes were turning her, but the manager's face just darkened. Don't you ever call me your daughter, you dirty old woman, she hissed. I dislike poor people. Get up now and clean my office. Her words were like knives, but Mama Margaret swallowed the pain, knowing sometimes silence speaks louder than anger. She slowly stood, leaving her food behind. As Mama Margaret walked away with a heavy heart, the manager did something truly wicked. She looked at the humble plate of rice and stew with a disgusted sneer before grabbing it and tossing the whole meal straight into the trash bin. The sound of that plastic hitting the bottom of the bin echoed through the canteen, and everyone watching froze in shock. They couldn't believe she would go that far just to hurt a poor old woman. But the manager just adjusted her expensive jacket and walked out like she had done nothing wrong. Back in the office, Mama Margaret was on her hands and knees, scrubbing the floor while her stomach growled from hunger and her head felt light from exhaustion. The manager burst in again, her heels clicking like warning drums, and started shouting about how slow the old woman was moving, calling her a smelling witch and telling her she didn't belong in a corporate environment. Mama Margaret looked up with tears in her eyes, asking why she was being treated with such hatred, but the manager just laughed and threatened to fire her right there on the spot. When Mama Margaret finally returned to the canteen to find her food, she saw the empty table and then the mess inside the trash can, and man, that really hurt her spirit more than any words could. She sat down on a hard plastic chair, her hands trembling with fatigue, and whispered a prayer for strength to endure the day. She felt so small and so invisible in this big building full of people who only cared about money and power. Just then, Ada, the receptionist, walked in carrying her own lunch, and when she saw Mama Margaret sitting there looking so defeated, her heart just broke. She walked straight over and pushed her own plate of food toward the old woman, telling her to eat and not to worry about her. Ada had seen what the manager did, and she was determined to make it right, even if it meant she went hungry herself. She whispered that kindness is the only thing that matters in this world, and she wouldn't let Mama Margaret suffer alone. Mama Margaret looked at that young girl with so much love in her eyes and told her that her kindness was like a medicine for her soul. She said that giving food was like giving life, and that God would surely reward such a pure heart. They sat together in that quiet corner, two souls connected by a simple act of humanity, while the rest of the world rushed by them, oblivious to the beautiful moment happening right in front of them. The next morning, Mama Margaret arrived at the gate feeling a bit stronger, and she spent a few moments talking to the security guard, who was always so respectful and kind. Sue told her about his son starting school, and Mama Margaret shared some deep wisdom about how education is a light that no one can blow out. She told him that giving a child wisdom is better than giving them gold, because with wisdom, they will find the gold themselves. And Sue just nodded, knowing this woman was no ordinary cleaner. Suddenly, the Manager appeared at the gate, looking like she hadn't slept a wink, and she was in a total rage. She marched straight up to Mama Margaret and started screaming that it was her fault her boyfriend had broken up with her the night before. She claimed the old woman brought bad luck, and before anyone could even blink, she raised her hand and slapped Mama Margaret right across the face. The sound of that slap was so loud, it felt like time stopped for everyone standing there. Sue, the security guard, didn't even think twice. He stepped forward and grabbed the manager's wrist to stop her from hitting the old woman again. He shouted at her that she was heartless and that she couldn't treat a human being like that no matter how much money she had. The manager was gasping in shock that a lowly guard would dare to touch her, and she started screaming that he was finished in this company and that she would make sure he never worked again in this city. Within an hour, a big meeting was called in the HR office, and the manager told a pack of lies saying Sue had attacked her for no reason while she was just doing her job. She painted herself as the victim, and because she had a high position, they believed her over. The honest guard, they told Sue to pack his bags and leave immediately, even though everyone knew the truth. They were all too scared of the manager to speak up and defend him. Mama Margaret found Sue at his guard post, packing his small bag, and she started crying because she felt so guilty that he lost his job for her. But Sue just looked at her with so much dignity and told her he would do it again 1,000 times because it was the right thing to do. He told her not to worry about him because a good man always finds a way, and he even promised that when he found a new job, he would come back to help her find a better place to work. As Sue walked out of the gates for the last time, Mama Margaret stood there watching him go, and she whispered that the world might reward wickedness for a while, but God never forgets a kind heart. She felt a fire starting to burn in her soul because she realized the test was over, and it was almost time to reveal the truth. But first she had to see just how deep the rot in this company really went. When Ada heard that Sue had been fired for protecting Mama Margaret, she absolutely lost it. She didn't care about her paycheck or her career anymore. She marched straight into the manager's office and told her exactly what she thought, calling her a disgrace and a woman with no home training. She told the manager that she might have fine clothes and a big title, but inside she was empty and cruel, and that God was going to judge her for everything she had done. The manager was so furious, she tried to slap Ada too, but Ada was ready for her and caught her hand mid-air, telling her to never try that again or she would regret it. Ada told her to go ahead and fire her because she would rather be unemployed with her dignity than work one more day for a monster like her. The whole office was staring through the glass walls as Ada walked out with her head held high, leaving the manager shaking with silent rage in a desperate move to save her pride. The manager called the anonymous big boss of the company, demanding that Ada be fired for stealing and insulting her. But the voice on the other end was cold as ice and told her that Ada would not be fired and that Sue was being rehired. Immediately the manager was stunned and started hissing that the boss must be a fool or sleeping with the receptionist, because she couldn't understand why anyone would value a lowly employee over here. A week later, tragedy struck when Mama Margaret was cleaning the executive floor and her foot slipped on a wet patch. She fell hard and the pain was so intense she couldn't even stand up. The staff rushed to her side and she was taken to the hospital, where the doctors said she had a broken leg and needed a very expensive surgery that cost ₦1 million. And man, things were looking really dark for the old woman, who was still pretending to be poor. Ada didn't hesitate for a second. She told the doctor she would sell the only piece of land she inherited from her late parents just to pay for the surgery. She didn't have the money in her bank account, but she was willing to sacrifice her entire future to save the woman she now loved like a mother. She ran out of the hospital to find a buyer, not knowing that the secret son of Mama Margaret was already on his way. While Mama Margaret lay in the hospital bed, her son Joseph finally arrived, and he was looking at her with so much worry and frustration. He told her that this secret mission had gone too far and that she almost died playing this game of being a cleaner. But Mama Margaret just smiled and told him she had seen things She never would have known from her mansion she had found a daughter in Ada and a son in Sue, and that was worth more than all her billions. Joseph went to the doctor's office to pay the bill, and that's when he heard about the girl who was trying to sell her land to save his mother. He was so moved by Ada's sacrifice that he decided to pay for everything anonymously to see what she would do next. He realized his mother was right about finding true hearts in the most unlikely places, and he felt a deep respect for the humble receptionist who was willing to give up everything for a stranger. When Ada returned to the hospital with the small amount of money she had gathered, the doctor told her the bill was already paid, and she just stood there in total shock, wondering who could have done such a thing. She spent the whole night by Mama Margaret's bedside praying and crying, hoping the old woman would wake up and be okay. She had no idea that her life was about to change forever, and that the biggest surprise of all was just hours away. The next morning, Joseph found Ada outside on a bench and finally decided it was time to introduce himself as the son of the woman she had been protecting. He told her the whole truth about why his mother was working as a cleaner and how she wanted to find people who were real and not just chasing her money. Ada's mouth fell open as she realized the woman she had been feeding and defending was actually the mother of the billionaire who owned the company she worked for. Ada felt like she was in a movie as Joseph told her how much his mother loved her and how she had passed the test of character with flying colors. He explained that his mother was a teacher of life and that she wanted to prove that dignity doesn't come from a title but from the soul. Ada was shaken as she realized she had been friends with royalty all along, and she couldn't wait to see Mama Margaret again to hear the story from her own lips. Ada stood there in the hospital garden feeling like the ground was floating beneath her feet because the secret Joseph just shared was too big for her mind to even grasp. He told her that his mother wasn't just some rich lady, but a woman who believed that wealth without humility was like a beautiful house with no foundation, and she had chosen to suffer those insults just to find a heart as pure as Ada's. Joseph looked at her with so much warmth and said his mother had been searching for a daughter like her whole life, and he was so grateful she found her. The next morning, Ada rushed back to the hospital with a heart full of excitement. But when she got to the ward, the bed was empty, and the nurse told her that Mama Margaret had been discharged and taken home by her son. Ada felt a sudden pang of worry, wondering if she had missed her chance to say everything she felt. But then the doctor handed her a small envelope with an address written in gold ink and told her that Joseph wanted both her and Sue to come over immediately because the real story was only just beginning. She met Sue at the junction, and he was looking a bit nervous, but they hopped in a bus and watched as the city buildings turned into massive estates with green lawns and high walls. When the bus stopped in front of the address, they both just stood there with their mouths hanging open because they were looking at a mansion that looked like a palace from a fairy tale, with fountains splashing in the sun and luxury cars lined up like soldiers. Sue whispered that he had never seen anything like it, even on TV, and he felt like he was stepping into another dimension. The massive gate swung open, and a polite guard led them inside, where the floors were made of shining marble and the air smelled like expensive flowers. And as they walked through the grand hall, Mama Margaret appeared at the top of the staircase, looking like a queen in her fine silk robes, but still wearing that same gentle smile. She called them her children, and her voice was so full of love it made Ada burst into tears right there on the spot, because she realized that even with all this gold, Mama Margaret was still the same sweet woman who shared her secrets. In the canteen, Mama Margaret walked down slowly, her legs still bandaged, and she took their hands, telling them that she hid the truth because she wanted to see the hearts of people. When they thought she had nothing to offer, she looked at Sue and told him that his courage to defend an old woman cost him his job, but it gained him a family. And then Joseph stepped forward with a big white envelope and handed it to Sue, telling him it was enough money to start any business he wanted, so he would never have to stand at a gate again unless he owned the building. Sue fell to his knees, shaking with gratitude because he couldn't believe his Life had changed so fast from being fired and insulted to becoming a business owner in a single day. Then, Mama Margaret turned to Ada and took her hand with a look of deep pride, saying that Ada had proven herself worthy by being willing to sell her only land for a stranger, and she announced right there that she wanted Ada to be the one to marry her only son, because she was the only woman who loved them for who they were and not what they had. Joseph took Ada's hand and looked into her eyes, telling her he had loved her from the moment he saw her kindness in the office, and that he didn't care about levels or titles because her heart was the most valuable thing in the building. Ada felt like she was dreaming as she said yes, and they embraced while Mama Margaret clapped her hands with joy, knowing her mission was finally complete. And her son was finally safe in the arms of someone real. But there was still one more piece of business to settle back at the office. A few days later, a massive general meeting was called at the company, and every employee was ordered to attend. The wicked manager was standing at the front looking all proud, and thinking she was finally going to get that promotion she always wanted. But then the doors opened, and Joseph walked in looking every bit like the billionaire boss he was, and beside him was Mama Margaret, dressed in royal colors, looking at the crowd with a calm but powerful gaze that made everyone's heart skip a beat. Joseph stood on the stage, and the room went dead silent as he introduced himself as the CEO and the secret owner they had never met. He told them the whole truth about his mother's disguise, and how she had been testing their character for months, and man, you could see the faces of the staff turning pale as they remembered every mean thing they had ever said or done to the old cleaner they thought was nobody. But now they realized she was the one who signed their paychecks. He pointed his finger directly at the manager, and his voice turned into thunder as he listed every one of her crimes, from the stolen food to the slap at the gate and the lies she told to get Sue fired. The manager fell to her knees crying and begging for mercy, saying she didn't know who Mama Margaret was, but Mama Margaret just looked down at her and said it wasn't about who she was, but about how the manager treated a human being who was supposedly beneath her, and that pride was a poison that finally caught up to her. Joseph ordered the guards to take the manager out, and she was dragged away screaming and crying in front of everyone she had ever bullied. Then he told the rest of the staff that the company would now be built on respect, and that anyone who looked down on the poor would have no place in his world. He officially promoted Ada to a high position and welcomed Sue back as a guest of honor, proving that the last shall truly be first in the end. Wedding of Joseph and Ada was the biggest event the city had ever seen, but in the middle of all the luxury, they kept the heart of the village alive with traditional music and food, and Mama Margaret sat on her throne of joy watching her family grow. She knew that her little experiment had changed lives forever, and that the legacy of her family would now be built on the kindness she found in a dusty office corridor. This story teaches us that your character is your true identity, and how you treat those who can do nothing for you is the greatest test of your soul, because you never know when the person you are looking down on is actually the one holding the key to your future.
These stories are our legacy. To hear more ancestral tales, please like, subscribe, share, and leave a comment.